Hi, this is Pamela Worth with Hello Health Podcast, and today I have Dr. Alexis. Doctor, it is a pleasure to have you.
Thank you, Pamela.
So, obviously, you've got an incredible background, not only inspired by your own mom's battle with breast cancer, but you've got a medical degree, and you are taking care of patients as well as family members, and have also started this incredible food company. So, tell us a little bit about you.
Thanks, Pamela. Yeah, my journey has been long and twisted. I actually started out in college as an art major. I was a sculptor and an industrial designer and worked in the field for a few years. And then my mother was diagnosed with stage four breast cancer, was given 6 months to live. And at that time, I was in my early 20s. She was in her mid 40s, and it caught my whole family by surprise, of course. And we had at that point just kind of had a real traditional, standard American diet. None of us, I mean, we always like had a very active life, but certainly we're not health conscious. Our idea of a vegetable was like, some frozen broccoli, and that's kind of how we all grew up. I also come from a really severe family of diabetics, lots of type ones, and treats were always going to the donut shop and making cookies, and that's just kind of how we lived. And so, of course, we were all just shocked. My mom, at that point, she was this brilliant scientist and a head of research department at a big university. And she just made it her job to figure out, oh my gosh, like I'm so young. What could I have done different to prevent this? And she started, giving me all of this amazing research. She started implementing changes into her life. So I got to witness that. And she was passing on the research to me. So I got to read it and understand it at the same time. And my whole family just woke up into, what is a healthy diet and lifestyle, and how can we work together to improve so none of this has to happen to anybody else. Um, so kind of fast forward, we made all these huge changes. My mom, who, unfortunately, when she was diagnosed, it had already metastasized to her bones and her brain. So she was able to slow it down, and she ended up living for 5 years after she was given 6 months to live. So she did well, and it gave us this beautiful time as a family to spend together. We all kind of had our own healing happen. I got so interested in medicine. My brother got so interested in medicine. We both ended up changing career paths and going to medical school. So I always kind of say, my mom, in a way, sacrificed her own life to save her family. And in her diagnosis, actually, she was the oldest of eight. It triggered her two youngest sisters to start getting screening younger and saved their lives too, because they ended up having cancer in their 30s. They would have never been diagnosed had my mom not gone through that.
Yeah, no, it's terrible. And, similarly or not similarly, my mother was diagnosed with stage four ovarian cancer, given 90 days to live. She's in year 7.5 now. So
Oh,
we're doing okay. But again, it's been an incredible journey to be able to have her and kind of rekindle a relationship and something that's a little bit it's still parent child, but something just a little bit different and more unique because it is kind of feels like borrowed time. But similarly, our family, all of our love and support was shown around sugar and treats and like, let me make you something. And it was usually baking. It wasn't, so it's been really interesting, and it's something that I've really tried to share with my family, is the need to show love through additional cooking, but it's not necessarily sugary cooking, um,
right.
or things that really get that sugar rush going through simple carbohydrates and things. Um, so tell us a little bit about your medical practice and then how you started this food company to help other people.
Well, I've been a physician in Arizona since 2009. So I feel like I have been through the gamut and seen what people struggle with. I specialized in women's health, did a lot, I have an integrative medical practice. So, we meet people where they are. We do a lot of diet and education. We try to get people off of drugs they don't need. Although if someone really needs a drug, we prescribe it, but we do it only, if it's absolutely, we've tried everything else. So we're really trying to do lifestyle, implementing those big changes and getting people on the road to wellness with proper nourishment. Um, so as human beings, we are wired to like sweet tasting things. It's genetic in us. It's the rapidly digesting carbohydrates, like you say, they give us quick energy. It feels good, and we seek it as humans. We just can't help but not. Um, so I see people struggle. 50% of Americans have some kind of blood sugar or insulin problem. And so it was me having this absolute love to be in the kitchen and baking. It's how I nourish my family, how I love to just even nourish myself. It's how I would unwind after big, heavy patient loads all week. So it was me kind of in the 16 years of seeing what people struggle with and not being unwilling to compromise with my own nourishment and with my own sweet tooth because I love sweet things. I love it. Um, so it was it was over the years of just kind of loving to use those old school family Betty Crocker style recipes because they still felt good, like nourishing my soul. Yet, how do we modernize those and make them super clean and something I actually want to feed my family? So I kind of figured out this little system of baking in my own kitchen where it was just like cup for cup, 1-to-1 substitutes for flour, sugar, eggs, and butter. And these are, the foundational ingredients in traditional dessert, and also the ones that cause a lot of problems, whether it's, food allergies, sensitivities, or just being unhealthy. And so I was just basically trying to figure out how can I use these recipes, make clean versions. And my family is like, they didn't want anything that was healthy. So I had to know that these desserts were coming out secretly healthy because they were tough critics. And it's refining this little swap system I created over the years. And after 16 years of the patient care and really seeing like, oh my gosh, this is like this is a big problem with people. Like people with metabolic disorders, people with just, sugar addictions, people with, the diabetes and insulin sensitivity issues, with cardiovascular disease. 50% of Americans have some kind of cardiovascular disease too. And 50% of us have some kind of food allergy, dietary restriction, or a food sensitivity. So yeah, the Detox Desserts was born out of kind of my love for baking, my love for nutrition, and being unwilling to compromise and figuring out this own little baking system in my own kitchen. Um, so I basically was after 16 years, just kind of it's like I knew I needed to make a change, and this thing was calling me, and so finally I just surrendered to it. It got so big, I couldn't not do it. So luckily, my husband and I own our practice together, and he saw it too. He saw it in me. He's like, I really think you've got something, and I want you to have the freedom to run with it. And, feel free to take a step back here in the practice. I'll lean in and let's make this work. And so that was, back in 2023, I launched my ingredients as kind of an e-commerce store, basically to just simplify healthy baking for people and make it accessible. Because healthy baking, it's complicated. Most of the time, the results are unpredictable, disappointing. So it was my, intent to just simplify healthy baking, allergy-free baking for people. And I launched those, and the feedback from bakers was like, wow, this is so awesome. And everybody else was like, oh my gosh, Dr. Alexis, I love this concept, but I don't want to bake. And so it was very shortly after we launched the ingredients, we're like, oh, well, we never actually intended to start a bakery, but it looks like we need to start a bakery too. So I built out the bakery late last year, and now we've now been drop shipping our desserts all made with our signature ingredients nationally. Yeah, it's going so good.
That's fantastic. So tell us kind of some of the ingredients that you found are lower inflammatory on the system that people still enjoy and is actually doctor approved.
Yeah. I'm really trying hard to balance macronutrients when we're working with these ingredient substitutes. Really pumping in a lot more protein. Protein is what's going to satisfy us, so we're not grabbing for more and more. I'm one of those people. You give me a rack of Oreos, I will eat the whole rack of Oreos. So people that tend to overeat, which is a lot of people, having balanced macronutrients, healthy, good fats, lots of protein, the carbohydrates being low, but the carbohydrates contained within them being very slowly digesting. So you're just getting that nice trickle of carbohydrates for sustained energy. That's what we're going for. So there's a lot of the nutrition science and kind of baking chemistry packed within the baking substitutes. But that's what I've found that, and that's what I've always practiced with my patients when I'm teaching nutrition is balanced macronutrients. And it's not hard. It's like we want 20 to 30 grams of protein at least, breakfast, lunch, dinner. We want a dose of some healthy fat, something, extra virgin olive oil, nuts and seeds, avocados, things like that. And then we want a small amount of slowly digesting healthy carbohydrate. Yeah, so my ingredients are foundational in the Mediterranean diet, which isn't trendy or sexy, but it's the diet that's most revered and studied for improving longevity and decreasing disease. And that's, I feel like, what we're all going for, long, healthy lives, versus, just being a vegan or a keto or, one of these more trendy diets that maybe work for some people for some things, but long term isn't to promote longevity and decrease disease.
Do you have any suggestions for people that are easy things to start with before going all
All in with what respect?
in terms of cooking or changing ingredients or things that you would suggest in terms of adding into your recipes or your grocery list or things, that I think sometimes people can get overwhelmed by the idea of doing. I mean, well, some people like to do everything all at once, and then some people are like, "Look, there's only so far I can take my family," and so maybe some easy things to start with, especially with those that are maybe older or younger.
Yeah, just tiptoeing into the healthier realm of baking. Absolutely. Getting the white flour out. I say that's a great place to start, and getting the white sugar out. So if you can stick to a whole grain, that's really, even if it's not a gluten-free whole grain, just stick to a whole grain. That's gonna way serve your body. Remember that fiber is what slows down digestion of a carbohydrate. So, pairing a healthy carb with lots of fiber with a healthy fat is then going to slow down the digestion even further, which is going to provide nice sustained energy, more balanced mood. You'll sleep better. So just getting the white flour and refined grains out, switching to whole grains, and the sugar, and in detox desserts, I'm getting all of the rapidly digesting carbohydrates out. So I do not use honey or maple syrup or even dates with detox desserts. Can you do that in a healthy way? Absolutely. Absolutely. But first, I would say get white sugar out, switch it to honey, little, dates, maple syrup, something like that, and then ease your way even out of those and maybe reduce those by half.
And then in terms of if certain tests or things that you encourage people to do or things that they can understand a little bit more about themselves, is it purely a blood test, or are there other ways that they can kind of take a look at themselves and say, okay, well, I actually feel better, or my joints, or like certain ways that you encourage people when you first meet with them to understand what might be causing inflammation in their body and what inflammation is, and kind of some
Yeah.
potential next steps for how to deal with some of this.
Hmm. I love what you said about just feeling into your body. Do I feel inflamed today? I would go even as far as to say, did I have a good, healthy bowel movement today? Do I feel empty, after my bowel movement? Did I sleep well? Our bodies were designed to rest and heal during rest. And did I sleep a good 7 to 9 hours restfully? Do I wake up with energy? That would be another question to ask yourself. And I know we've all felt days where, we eat bad the day before, we wake up and our joints just feel stiff and our brains don't feel quite clear. So yeah, I would just say really pay attention to just like kind of your normal and then a good yearly blood work that is actually complete with a lot of panels that regular doctors don't often do in a yearly blood work. So, besides the basic like liver and kidney function and red and white blood cells, I always do a complete thyroid checkup. I do inflammatory markers like HSCRP. I do ferritin, which is a storage form of iron, also can be with ferritin's high. It's also an inflammatory marker. Um, and insulin levels. Like it's so easy to see if your body is a little bit insulin resistant. And if you are, that causes inflammation. Any of fasting insulin above 10, in my opinion, is too much. And if you do have a high resting or fasting insulin level, you have to be ultra concerned about reducing any rapidly digesting carbohydrate um, because that's going to affect your metabolism a ton. High fasting insulin tells your body to start storing anything that you eat as fat, even a good healthy food. So it's just paramount for a properly functioning metabolism to have normal fasting insulin levels. So there's so much, and insurance will pay for these, inflammatory, just basic inflammatory markers and insulin levels. So I don't know why normal primary care physicians don't automatically check it yearly, but those simple things can tell you so much about your body.
No, that's fabulous. Any other suggestions or thoughts you want to make sure you get across with our listeners today? Anything particular around women's health or anything that you've learned that you would really like to pass on to those? Most people in the family are women that are the caregivers, not only of themselves, but their spouses, their children, their aging family members. Anything in particular you really want to share with anyone here?
Hmm. Um, I'd say for women too, because we, like you said, we are like the nurturers, we're the caregivers, and I feel like most women's lives are like running marathons. And we tend to get so sapped out because we give and give and give and don't usually stop and properly rest, which can just really cause your adrenal health to go into the toilet. Something I've experienced personally, and then I've seen it with, gosh, it seems like three-fourths of my patients I see this with just abnormal cortisol levels, whether it's just cortisol that are in the tank all the time and they have adrenal fatigue, or they have just high cortisol levels 24/7 and they're just always tired and wired and they can't sleep and their brain isn't, functioning clearly. So that would be one thing for sure for women to test, keep an eye on, and then just to kind of piece that back into the dietary. How good clean diet can help your cortisol normalize. Any kind of blood sugar spike causes um, a metabolic stress in your body, which your body is going to recognize just as a basic stress, which is going to produce more cortisol. So, so for me, when I'm teaching people about diet and stress, you have to go back to this balanced macronutrients, no highs or lows in blood sugar, proper rest, and checking your cortisol level because normal cortisol will make your life so much better. It's going to affect all your sex hormones, your, estrogen, progesterone will function properly. And because if your cortisol isn't, you don't have that nice diurnal curve of your cortisol, you have no foundation for hormonal health.
Yeah, that's a whole nother story. And so,
It is,
so
yeah. It's
interesting.
something to get into. It's a lot, but it's just I don't think people understand the gravity of that particular hormone and how it affects our whole body and functioning.
Well, and I frankly have done a deep dive with my doctor who introduced us. Um, she said that it was super important before we attack any hormone levels to attack that cortisol level. And I
Yes.
think so many of us get caught up in taking care of everything, and then and then you start to feel bad, and then you think, oh, it must be hormones. Well,
Hmm.
potentially we can take a look at why we feel that way first, and then we can attack the hormones. So,
Yeah.
and thankfully, I haven't had to attack the hormones since I got the cortisol levels under control. So, anyway, it's super interesting and something for people to be aware of for sure. So, thank you so much for sharing everything.
Oh, of course. Thanks for having me.
Any other suggestions or anything else you want to add?
Um, anything else you'd like to ask me? I don't know.
Oh, no, it's great. I'll make sure that we have your detox.desserts on Instagram on the show notes, as well as your website, detoxdesserts.com. And I
Okay.
really appreciate you being here.
It's a pleasure. Thanks, Pamela.